Hello everyone, welcome to an overview of Epidemius of Nurgle. So I did a few turns to check how the faction plays out and drew my conclusions on it. I'll go through the most meaningful aspects, and in the end I'll provide you also with some army compositions that you may wish to try for your own campaigns. Without further ado, let's play then with Epidemius. For your short victory conditions, you need to destroy the factions of Hag Grief, Urson Revivalists, and the Masters of Innovation. And you also have to occupy, loot, raise or sack 35 different settlements. Achieving this will give you plus 30 winds of magic per turn to all armies, great of course for Nurgle, to ensure all your casters have enough power during the course of the battles. Now this is a rather difficult short victory, one that requests you to expand into different locations, actually engage with some pretty difficult foes. Still one that you can definitely rush quickly if you know what you're doing, so regardless of the direction that you go for, should be interesting. Long victory needs to achieve the short victory, occupy, loot, raise or sack 80 different settlements, destroy the Ice Court and Great Orthodoxy, so you're going against Kislev, and then hold the settlement of Talablaheim. Now this is quite a very difficult long campaign as well, since it forces you to go further south and ignore any possible enemies that you may have done in the pursuit of the goals from the short victory. So expect to have multiple fronts throughout this campaign while going for this objective. Now achieving this, of course, plus 10 Lord Recruit rank. As always, it is great to ensure your new lords are very capable and that you have some options. Epidemius, he's the Plagued Penandrum and gains following benefits. Gains powerful rewards based on number of plagues, he's great at it. Cycle time -1 for plague flesh, poppies, buildings. Recruit rank +2 for plague bearers and exalted plague bearers. And campaign movement range +25% for plague cultists. So overall everything really goes around the plagues and the plague bearers, making this a very demonic centric gameplay too. Climate is great, like for every Nurgle faction, since desert is truly the only uninhabitable terrain. Expect this faction to be great for domination and full map completion. Your starting location is a 3-settlement province. It is great to turn it into your main military production, and you also have a nice resource to at least extend the duration of plagues. Now you have access to the sea, which implies always the possibility of getting some goodies early on for some extra money and items. Make sure you pursue that option whenever available. Typical expansion is to conquer the initial foe and try to control a good portion of the Chaos lands, like maybe 3 to 4 provinces at least initially. Whether you wish to go for Boris or Malachi before dealing with Malice is really up to you, although not really the recommended idea. Just get Malice as soon as possible so that he's not the powerhouse that he can become. Overall, this is an interesting position, and of course you can try to go into either the east or the west locations. I wouldn't advise crossing the terrain, I wouldn't advise crossing to the mountains, but it will always depend on your course of action and your preferences. Maybe you have a bit of luck, which I didn't have, so it's really up to you. Diplomatically, you're part of Chaos, but that does not imply you are necessarily friends with all Chaos factions. Norska and some of the Warriors of Chaos factions might like you, but do not trust any Tzeentch-aligned ones, for instance. In addition, Dark Elves, Kislev, Dwarfs, Empire, all will soon want you dead. Instead, try to gain alliances with Norska and Skaven, benefiting from their ranged units if possible, or even their single entities. It's really up to you. But don't count on having way too many allies, because that's not gonna happen. Focus then on these two, and you'll likely have at least some different units from the outposts. So Nurgle factions, they revolve around plagues, and these have been reworked. You have to select a target settlement or army first, then choose 3 symptoms to create a plague. You need infections for this. This is your unique currency. And these plagues generate bonuses for you, of course, and debuffs for any enemy plagues. That hasn't changed. You can also spend infections to summon occultists to spread plagues to enemy settlements and armies. Now, Nurgle forces, they are recruited from a pool of units that keeps replenishing. When they are recruited, they are not all in full strength as well. So you need to replenish first, with the advantage that you can recruit a lot of units at once. Now, Nurgle buildings also have a peculiarity. They are cyclical in nature, meaning that they cost infections the first time you build, and then they evolve alone, with no further cost, depending on different factors that determine the cycle time. With each cycle comes a different effect or units available to recruit. You can also use infections to instantly cycle to the next level of a building if you need. Overall, this is a very interesting system. Note, of course, that for Epidemius, the Plague Bearer building is the one that has less cycle cost. So, unholy manifestations. These are unlocked depending on the level of Nurgle corruption around the world. The more, the better. Manifestations are really cool. They include casualty replenishment rate, chance of a plague spreading, the growth plus 200 and minus 20% recruit cost, and you can also give a random plague to every settlement and army in a province. Save those for instance, the end game effects, where you have tons of enemy armies. That is great to use that one. In addition, you have the tally of pestilence, Epidemius' main mechanic. So the more enemies are infected with plagues, the better his faction becomes, really. This reaches tremendously cool levels, ensuring your faction really shines in terms of research, for instance. The more, of course, the enemy is reduced to goo with all the plagues that they will have. This is a very interesting one. Notice the types of abilities that it will have there, and definitely ensure that they are always plagued. In terms of edicts, you have infections per turn and Nurgle corruption edict. Then you have a plague duration and chance of plague spreading, great for epidemics. Rush cycle cost and recruitment cost reduction, as well as a control and growth. Remember, growth is really important to you as well. Now, that's a very cool idea with the infections per turn with the plague duration, so you kind of have to choose. In terms of the army stances, the basic ones: channeling, that costs 10% movement, and camp, that costs 50% and gives replenishment and global recruitment and immunity tradition, as well as raiding, which costs 50% movement as well, immunity tradition, and then the basics: ambush and forced march. Overall, very thematic, and unfortunately slightly modifies the previous system that included an edict to reduce cycle time, which I liked, but currently it's more set into extending the duration of plagues. Now, in terms of buildings, you have a specific building in the Forest of Decay that gives plague duration, +1 turn, and chance of spread +20%. You must ensure that all your plagues keep spreading well right at the start. Then you have 5 military buildings, and only 2 are required in a capital. In addition, the defensive buildings are the ones you can see there that provide heroes and hero capacity on your right. Now, because of how the buildings are cyclical, you are not always able to recruit the specific units, and you must be on alert to ensure that you recruit as they are available to you. Now, in terms of infrastructure, we have an infections per turn and control, we have an income building, we have a growth and Nurgle corruption building, and also recruitment cost reduced and recruitment health increased. Also note the bonuses if your growth is really good. Now, in terms of research, it has been reworked and it's now much better. It's split into 2 areas. So faction with benefits for plagues, diplomacy, income, growth, etc. And then also you have the military ones. Military ones are very good. They give you benefits to your forces split between infantry, beasts, and cavalry and flyers. This is great because finally you can immediately augment your units to the best of their ability really fast. And that's something that I really like to do. As always, you have your Lord-specific skills, the red line skills or army, and the blue line skills or campaign. I'm going briefly here over the skills for Epidemius. Overall, remember that his red line is from heralds, by the way. Blue line skills. They include upkeep reduction in the first part and replenishment combined with growth in the final part, as well as lightning strike, as always. So overall, the attrition, the growth and casualty replenishment rate, these are very cool. I like to get them. And then we have the Renowned and Feared with +1 recruitment rank for Nurgle units. This is interesting because typically Nurgle didn't have this. So alongside the extra upkeep reduction, that's really cool. Remember that in terms of the red line, they're split into two different ones, one for heralds, one for the Chaos Lords. And should be noted that, of course, like I mentioned, Epidemius is a herald. Now there are some differences as to how a unit will become later on after all benefits, but typically with heralds you might want to invest into the demonic units, which is great for Epidemius, while with Chaos Lords you might want to invest in mortal units. In terms of heroes, remember that Plague Ridden, mentioned here, is the one responsible for replenishing troops, while cultists have the summons that you may like. And here we have the red line skills for the Herald. Notice how they are split into the flyers, the cavalry, the infantry, that sort of split. Also with good bonuses, including a lot of melee attack and melee defense stuff, which I really like and that Nurgle really benefits from. Now, in terms of the ones for the Chaos Lords and Chaos Sorcerer Lords, they are mostly divided into mortals and demonic units, with a lot of armor benefits and some resistances, so your units will become more tankier. Kind of like going a little bit more into the Nurgle idea with these guys. So as for Epidemius, he shines with Plague Bearers and Exalted Plague Bearers, as well as Plague Drones, with Pox Riders, anything that spreads Plague or has Plague in the name. Therefore, some unique combinations are possible with him, although I'm a great fan of also merging the demons with the mortals in this case. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of typical compositions that you can try, but I always like to go thematic if you choose. Always remember that I advise at least a caster hero and a melee or support hero that goes with you, but it's truly up to you the number of heroes that you use. Maybe you don't wish to use any, or you wish to use a lot. The yellow numbers, of course, always the number of red line skills required to buff the composition. Over here we have the Chaos Lords, typically work best with the mortal units because they give them an extra physical resistance, combined with the already good red line skills that they have for those mortal units. As for the Chaos Sorcerer Lords, they have the possibility of trying to run some more basic armies with Forsaken, Chaos Spawns. Mainly you can use these as those sweeper armies that I like to mention. Perfect Vigor, that's actually excellent in sieges, so remember that. If you wish to have an army that can go quickly into sieges, that can do decently well on the walls, climbing the ladders, there you have. And then for heralds, of course, you can bring just the demons and keep it thematic. The last composition here is kind of like a meme army, but this is a very good reinforcing army that you can try because everyone is fast. Epidemius, he's great to have a nice demon-focused playthrough, and one that heavily deals with plagues. If that is the style that you aim for as Nurgle, then he's definitely your guy. His beginning can be tough in some circumstances, but once you survive it and you have a good solid base of operations, his mechanic allows very good units and campaign benefits really early on, which is super helpful to make him into a powerhouse. Combined with the unholy manifestations when you can, and you can maximize your gain. Once more, just make sure that you're kind of like defending or set up a defense idea where you're not going to expand over here. You're not going to expand over here. If you do this, it kind of really helps you into expanding where you wish, and of course turning him into a very powerful lord. Your army, it will consist of great infantry, great cavalry, average missiles, great single entities, good flyers. They're very slow though, and you have the cycling recruitment system to accommodate to. Replenishment is great, one of the best factions for it. However, be mindful that all units start lower in health, and you have to accommodate for that part. This unholy manifestation is very good when you're recruiting a full army, so that it can immediately replenish really fast, and that's how I mainly use it. So, I believe now it is time to plague the world with Epidemius of Nurgle.